Have you ever looked around your home and wondered why it still feels crowded, even after hours of cleaning and organizing? The truth is, decluttering isn't about doing more, it's about doing the right things. After 60, your time, energy, and peace of mind become more valuable than ever. Every unnecessary task steals a little of that precious freedom. Today, we're going to uncover 7 useless tasks that many people continue doing during every decluttering session, and why letting go of these habits can make your life simpler, lighter, and far more enjoyable. One of the biggest mistakes people make when decluttering is spending valuable time organizing things they no longer need. It seems productive at first. You buy storage bins, label boxes, rearrange shelves, and carefully place items in neat rows. When you're finished, everything looks cleaner and more organized. But if we're being honest, all you've really done is create a more attractive version of the same clutter. Think about how often this happens. You open a closet and find it overflowing with items. Instead of asking whether those items still belong in your life, you immediately start looking for ways to store them. You move things from one shelf to another. You stack boxes more efficiently. You fold, sort, and rearrange. Hours pass, and while the space may look better, it doesn't actually function better. The problem hasn't disappeared. It's simply been disguised. After 60, your energy becomes one of your most valuable resources. Every hour spent maintaining things you don't use is an hour that could be spent enjoying life. The goal of decluttering isn't to become a better organizer. The goal is to own less of what no longer serves you. That's an important distinction. Organization has its place, but organization should come after decluttering, not before it. Many people hold on to items because they once had a purpose. Perhaps it was a hobby you enjoyed years ago. Maybe it was equipment for a project you planned to start. It could be clothing that fit a different version of your life. The challenge is that we often confuse past usefulness with present value. Just because something was important at one time doesn't mean it still deserves space in your home today. A helpful question to ask is simple. If I didn't already own this, would I bring it into my home today? That question cuts through many excuses. Suddenly, the old exercise machine collecting dust, the stack of unused craft supplies, or the kitchen gadget hidden in the back of a cabinet becomes easier to evaluate. If you wouldn't choose it today, why continue giving it valuable space? The truth is that clutter often creates invisible burdens. Every possession requires some level of attention. It must be cleaned, moved, stored, repaired, or remembered. Even when you're not actively thinking about it, the presence of too much stuff can create a feeling of mental heaviness. You may not notice it immediately, but it affects how comfortable and peaceful your environment feels. Many people spend years believing they need more storage solutions. They buy additional shelves, larger cabinets, extra containers, and more furniture designed to hold belongings. Yet somehow the house never feels less crowded. That's because storage is rarely the real issue. The real issue is ownership. When too many unnecessary items remain, no amount of organization can create the feeling of openness and freedom you're seeking. It's also important to recognize that decluttering is not a test of your past decisions. Letting go of something does not mean you made a mistake by buying it. It does not mean you wasted money. It simply means that its role in your life has ended. Many people keep possessions because they feel guilty about the cost. They think, I paid good money for this. But keeping an unused item doesn't recover that expense. The money is already gone whether the item sits in a closet or not. What you can recover is the space, freedom, and peace of mind that come from releasing it. Sometimes people worry that getting rid of things will leave them without enough. Yet when they finally let go of excess possessions, they often discover the opposite. They realize they still have everything they truly need. In fact, they can find things more easily. Their homes become easier to clean. Their daily routines require less effort. Instead of feeling deprived, they feel relieved. Imagine opening a cabinet and immediately seeing what you need. Imagine a closet where every item fits comfortably and serves a purpose. Imagine shelves that display only things you enjoy, rather than storing things you've forgotten about. This isn't about creating a picture-perfect home. It's about creating a space that supports your current life instead of storing remnants of lives you've already lived. The most successful decluttering decisions are often the simplest. Rather than asking where an item should go, ask whether it should stay at all. That small shift changes everything. Instead of becoming a manager of possessions, you become a curator of what truly matters. You stop spending your time maintaining excess and start enjoying the benefits of simplicity. And remember, progress doesn't require perfection. You don't have to clear an entire room in one afternoon. You don't have to make every decision flawlessly. You only need to be honest with yourself about what adds value to your life today. One item at a time, one drawer at a time, one shelf at a time, you begin creating a home that feels lighter, calmer, and more welcoming. Because in the end, the purpose of decluttering is not to organize everything you own, it is to free yourself from everything you no longer need. So before you organize another box, shelf, or closet, pause and ask yourself, does this truly deserve a place in my life today? Another habit that quietly fills our homes and weighs down our lives is the tendency to keep things just in case. At first, it sounds reasonable. In fact, it often feels responsible. After all, who wants to throw something away only to need it later? That thought alone has convinced countless people to hold on to items for years, sometimes even decades. Yet when you take a closer look, you begin to realize that "just in case" is often one of the most expensive phrases in the world, not because it costs money, but because it costs space, energy, peace of mind, and freedom. Most homes contain entire collections of items saved for situations that never arrive. There are boxes of cables that belong to devices long gone. There are extra dishes used once every 10 years. There are tools for projects that were never started, materials for hobbies that were abandoned, and clothing saved for occasions that never happen. Each item remains because of a possibility, not a reality. The challenge is that possibilities are endless. If you allow every possible future event to determine what stays in your home, there will never be a reason to let anything go. Almost every object can be justified with some imaginary scenario. A broken appliance might be useful someday. An old chair could be repaired eventually. A stack of magazines may contain information you might want later. The mind is incredibly creative when it comes to inventing reasons to keep things. But here's an important question. How many of those just-in-case situations have actually happened? When most people answer honestly, they discover that very few have. In fact, many can identify items they have stored for 10, 15, or 20 years without using them once. Those possessions have occupied valuable space not because they were necessary, but because they represented a fear of future inconvenience. And that fear deserves attention. Often, keeping things just in case is not really about the item itself. It is about the emotions attached to it. Sometimes it reflects a fear of scarcity. Perhaps there was a time in life when resources were limited and throwing anything away felt risky. Sometimes it comes from a desire to feel prepared and in control. Sometimes it is simply uncertainty about the future. These feelings are understandable. Life teaches us that unexpected situations can occur. However, there is a difference between reasonable preparedness and excessive accumulation. Being prepared means keeping what is genuinely useful and likely to be needed. Accumulating means allowing fear of every possible scenario to dictate what stays in your home. As the years pass, this distinction becomes increasingly important. After 60, many people begin to value simplicity more than possession. They discover that peace often comes not from having more things available, but from having fewer things demanding attention. A home crowded with just-in-case items can create a subtle sense of stress. Closets become difficult to navigate. Storage areas become overwhelming. Finding what you actually need takes longer because it is hidden among things you probably never will. Think about the freedom that comes from opening a drawer and seeing only useful items. Think about the relief of entering a storage room and knowing exactly what is there. That feeling isn't created by keeping everything, it is created by trusting yourself to live with enough. Another truth worth considering is that most modern problems can be solved more easily than we imagine. If a rare situation arises, there are often alternatives. You can borrow an item, you can rent equipment, you can purchase something if it becomes genuinely necessary. Yet many people sacrifice years of living space to prepare for a problem that could be solved in a matter of hours if it ever occurred. It's also helpful to remember that every item you keep requires a silent commitment. It must be stored somewhere. It may need cleaning or maintenance. It occupies physical space and mental space. Even when you're not consciously thinking about it, it becomes part of the environment you manage every day. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with rocks. One rock may not seem significant, neither will the second or third, but eventually the weight becomes noticeable. The same thing happens with possessions. A single just-in-case item isn't the problem. The problem develops when hundreds of them accumulate over time. Together, they create a burden far greater than their individual size suggests. This doesn't mean becoming reckless or throwing away everything that isn't used weekly. Wisdom still matters. Some items deserve to stay because they serve a legitimate purpose or provide genuine security. The key is being honest about the difference between realistic need and imagined possibility. When evaluating an item, ask yourself a few simple questions. How long has it been since I used this? If I needed it again, how difficult would it be to replace or borrow? Am I keeping it because I truly need it or because I am afraid to let it go? These questions often reveal more than you expect. What many people discover is that their homes begin to feel lighter as they release these unnecessary backups and contingency plans. Rooms become more functional. Storage spaces become manageable. Daily life becomes simpler. And perhaps most importantly, they gain confidence in their ability to handle whatever the future brings without storing solutions to every imaginable problem. Life after 60 offers an opportunity to focus on what truly enriches your days. The memories you make, the relationships you cherish, the experiences you enjoy, and the comfort of a peaceful home matter far more than shelves filled with items waiting for unlikely emergencies. The future will always contain uncertainty, but freedom comes when you stop trying to prepare for every possible situation and start trusting your ability to handle whatever actually arrives. Don't let imaginary needs take up space that belongs to your real life. As we continue simplifying our homes and our lives, there is another habit that quietly consumes an enormous amount of time during the decluttering process. Feeling the need to read every single paper, document, receipt, note, and piece of correspondence before deciding what to do with it. At first, this seems sensible. After all, what if something important is hidden among those stacks of paper? What if there is valuable information you might need someday? What if throwing something away leads to regret later? These questions often sound reasonable, which is why so many people find themselves stuck when they reach the paperwork stage of decluttering. A person can begin with the best intentions, determined to clear a desk, a filing cabinet, or a storage box. Then they pick up one piece of paper and start reading. A few minutes later, they find another interesting document, then an old receipt, then a letter from years ago. Before long, what was supposed to be a decluttering session has become an afternoon spent sitting in a pile of papers, making little actual progress. The reality is that paper clutter has a unique ability to slow people down. Unlike larger objects, which can often be evaluated quickly, papers seem to demand attention. Each sheet appears to carry the possibility of importance. Because of that, many people treat every document as if it deserves a detailed review. Unfortunately, this approach can turn a manageable project into an overwhelming one. One reason this happens is because paper often carries emotional weight as well as information. A simple envelope may remind you of a certain period in your life. An old bill may bring back memories of a previous home. A handwritten note can transport you to another decade entirely. Suddenly, decluttering becomes less about sorting papers and more about revisiting the past. There is nothing wrong with remembering. Memories are valuable. They help shape who we are. The problem arises when every piece of paper becomes an invitation to stop moving forward. Decluttering is about creating space for the life you are living now. If every document pulls your attention backward, progress becomes difficult. Many people are surprised when they realize how much of their paper clutter is no longer relevant. Old utility bills, expired warranties, outdated manuals, bank statements from decades ago, advertisements, newsletters, duplicate records, and miscellaneous notes often occupy entire boxes, yet most of these documents have long since lost any practical value. They remain not because they are needed, but because nobody has taken the time to make a decision about them. The challenge is that paper tends to accumulate gradually. A few sheets arrive in the mail, a receipt gets placed in a drawer, a document is set aside for later review. None of these actions seem significant at the moment, but over months and years, those small decisions create towering stacks that feel intimidating to address. When faced with such a collection, many people assume they must carefully inspect every page before taking action. Yet this assumption often creates the very obstacle that keeps them from finishing. The more detailed the review process becomes, the longer the project takes. The longer it takes, the more exhausting it feels. Eventually, many people simply give up and leave the papers where they are. A more effective approach is to focus on categories rather than individual pieces whenever possible. Instead of treating every document as a separate investigation, look for broader patterns. Is this clearly outdated? Is it obviously no longer needed? Does it belong to a category that has already served its purpose? Often, the answer becomes clear much faster than expected. Think about how many important documents you truly need to keep. The number is usually far smaller than people imagine. Essential legal records, current financial documents, tax records for appropriate periods, property information, and certain personal records certainly deserve attention. But beyond those categories, much of what accumulates over the years is simply paper waiting for permission to leave. Another reason people struggle with paper clutter is the fear of making a mistake. They worry that one discarded document might someday become necessary. While caution has its place, it is important to recognize that fear often exaggerates risk. Many people have spent years storing boxes of papers because of a problem that never actually occurred. Meanwhile, those boxes continue taking up valuable space and creating unnecessary stress. Ask yourself honestly, how often have you needed a random receipt from 15 years ago? How many times have you searched for information in an outdated manual? How frequently have old advertisements or newsletters improved your daily life? The answer for most people is very rarely, if ever. What often gets overlooked is the emotional benefit of reducing paper clutter. There is something remarkably calming about opening a drawer and finding only what is relevant. There is relief in knowing where important documents are located. There is confidence in having a system that is simple enough to maintain without constant effort. Paper clutter can also create a subtle feeling of unfinished business. Every stack seems to whisper that something still requires attention. Even when you are not actively thinking about it, the presence of excessive paperwork can contribute to a sense of mental overload. Clearing those stacks often feels like lifting a weight that you didn't fully realize you were carrying. As life moves forward, simplicity becomes increasingly valuable. The goal is not to preserve every piece of information that has ever passed through your hands. The goal is to keep what genuinely serves you while releasing what no longer does. Your home should support your present and future, not function as an archive of every document from your past. When decluttering papers, remember that your time and energy are precious. You do not need to become trapped in endless reviewing, sorting, and rereading. Trust yourself to recognize what is truly important. Focus on progress rather than perfection. The purpose is not to analyze every sheet of paper, but to create a space that feels lighter, clearer, and easier to enjoy. Because every minute spent protecting unnecessary paperwork is a minute that could be spent enjoying the life those papers were meant to support. Don't let old papers keep you from making room for new possibilities.